You don't have a right to own nuclear weapons. Or do you? Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you're watching or listening. My name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information that plenty of bad folks would rather you not have. Today's lecture, ladies and gentlemen, will be a standoff lecture regarding Article 2 to the U.S. Constitution, or Article 2 to the Bill of Rights in the U.S. Constitution. We're going to go into a thorough display of what the founding generation actually meant by the word arms. No, it did not pertain to muskets. No, it didn't even pertain to firearms in particular. I'm going to show you today. First, we're going to look at the U.S. Constitution, and then we're going to look at the dictionary, the Samuel Johnson Dictionary of 1755, which likely the founding generation referenced whenever they were going about drafting the U.S. Constitution and using these terms in the manners that they did. So real quick, I actually forgot to switch this back to the U.S. Constitution, but of course, we need to consult the U.S. Constitution before we can actually go about looking at the definitions. So let's look at Article 2 to the Bill of Rights. What does it say? I'm sure we're all very familiar with it. Article 2 to the Bill of Rights in the U.S. Constitution says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And notice how arms is actually capitalized. Realistically, this doesn't play any major significance to the understanding or the definition of the word arms, but it does place an important emphasis on that word when normally that word wouldn't be capitalized. So let's go ahead and jump on over to the dictionary that was very likely used by the founding generation. And we say very likely because there's really no direct evidence. For instance, there's no primary sources during the ratification debates about if the Samuel Johnson Dictionary was used, or there's no, like when you read through Robert Yates's journals of the Philadelphia Convention, he doesn't ever write down, oh, and this is when the Samuel Johnson Dictionary was referenced. However, we do know that George Washington owned a copy of this dictionary, Thomas Jefferson owned a copy of this dictionary, and it was considered like the Oxford Dictionary of the time. It was the most premier, well put together and compiled dictionary for the English language. So let's go ahead and look on over at the Samuel Johnson Dictionary. Now this PDF scanned a little bit rough, but you can see it here vaguely at the bottom. There's also a couple other derivatives of this, like arm, just singular, and it has 3 or 4 definitions, such as the area between the hand and the shoulder. Another one says what is it? Like a delta where water breaches off. Another one is the limb of a tree. At the bottom of it, though, the 4th definition, it says something like not war in general, but to provide against, to go against. And then another derivative in this same dictionary, I think it's on the previous page of this one, is to arm, which is defined as to armor up, to provide a defense, to provide a front. But here at the bottom, arms, plural, the word specifically used in Article 2 to the U.S. Constitution, or to the Bill of Rights in the U.S. Constitution, is directly defined here. Now I'm showing you this here just so whenever we switch here to a second to the online version, you don't think there's any sort of mischaracterization, no misrepresentation at all. I just wanted to show you first here that it is in fact in the Samuel Johnson Dictionary, so that way whenever we go to a clearer version, the online version, you don't think there's any sort of mischaracterization. You can see it much clearer here at the bottom, more clearly, much more clearly, more clearly. Here at the bottom, it says arms. What does it define arms as being? Weapons of offense, or armor, or defense. Come back up to the top. It's got a few more definitions. It says a state of hostility, war in general, action, the act of taking arms. And then last one, the ensigns, armorial of a family. So here, I'll go ahead and put up the word image just itself, so that way you can see I'm not misreading it in any way. So there it is, arms, without the singular member, arma, Latin, weapons of offense, or armor of defense. I did say or armor or defense. It is or armor of defense. A state of hostility, war in general, action, the act of taking arms, the ensign's armorial of a family. So what does this mean? When we take into consideration things and writings like James Madison, the father of the U.S. Constitution, James Madison's Federalist Paper, I think it was the 46th Federalist Paper, 45th or the 46th Federalist Paper. You can go watch that in the Federalist Paper series we did not too long ago, where he says verbatim, the U.S. government cannot have any form of standing military. They are not in any way, the U.S. government is not in any way authorized to have a standing army, to have a standing force, to have a standing enforcement arm. Why? Because as he says, every single time that a government is granted to have a standing army, whether that be in a time of war or peace, it is always inevitably leveraged against the citizens to instill their ambitions in tyranny. Every single time. He said the reason the U.S. government has provided a new U.S. Navy, not just to establish it, but to maintain one, is because a Navy, if you look in the Samuel Johnson Dictionary of 1755, doesn't include the corpsmen, doesn't include the sailors. It only includes the naval vessels, the ships, the carriers. And he argued the reason for that is because it takes a very long time to build a ship, a very long time to have it armed. It doesn't take very long to collect up the militias of the states. That was his argument. And he took it a step further into really dangerous territory when he said, actually, if the U.S. government ever does try to form a standing army, it will be outnumbered 1 to 25 by the citizens, and it will be outnumbered 1 to 10 by able-bodied citizens. He was calling for absolute resistance, diplomatic and physical, if the U.S. government ever tried to raise a standing army. So what does this definition mean? After we consider primary sources such as that, it means we are not to trust any government, not just the U.S. government, any government with a monopoly on arms. That includes everything from biowarfare weaponry, or arms, better put, from firearms, from military level arms such as tanks and jets. Well, Caleb, this is going so far out of the pale, so far outside the scope of what the founding generation believed. Are you sure? Because let's play with the antithesis of that position. What is the antithesis of that position? The antithesis is to trust the government with a monopoly at those levels of force, with a monopoly on those arms. And what does that do? Well, we can again look at Federalist Paper 46, I think it was 46, it's 46 or 45, in which Madison says standing armies are always, 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 no exception, always used to subjugate the citizenry. It has never been wise, never been true in history, that when a government is trusted with arms, it doesn't inevitably use it against the citizens. Every single time. In every single instance. So you have to ask yourself, are you willing to trust your neighbor with weapons of mass destruction, with military-style arms? Or are you going to trust your government exclusively with those arms? This one's unpredictable. This one's about 50-50. Can go wrong, can go unharmful, can go peaceful. The other one, every single time in history, has proven to be bad. Every single time in history has proven to lead to destruction, to enslavement, to tyranny. And according to the principles the perspective of the founding generation, it is better to prefer dangerous liberty than comfortable slavery, than comfortable safety. I allude to it all the time. I need to figure out if it's, I need to remind myself if it's Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson who said this. But one of them had said, in essence, that if you trade freedom or liberty for even a small amount of safety, you will get neither, and you deserve neither. And that's exactly why, when they wrote Article 2 to the Bill of Rights in the U.S. Constitution, they didn't say the people have the right to muskets. The people have the right to bear frigates and cannons. Not modern cannons like mortars, cannonball cannons. The citizens have the right to have revolvers, and that's it. No, they used arms with a capital A. Emphasis on arms. Arms are any tool, any device used for offense. Taking an offense, staging a front. Why? Because yes, we have plenty of threats abroad, plenty of threats around the world, but what is the nearest? And what, throughout all of history, has shown to be very inclined to become your worst enemy? It is your own government. Now, of course, does that mean we can't have government? Obviously not. Because like Thomas Paine explained, the only reason we have government is because men aren't angels. We have to have some kind of government. Otherwise, we have anarchy, which is just tyranny clothed as free choice and liberty. Point being, throughout all of history, and this is the purview of the founding generation, it's why, again, they used arms and not musket, frigate, cannon, whatever word you want to put there. They believed the citizens, in order to sustain a free state, as declared in the second article to the Bill of Rights in the U.S. Constitution, must be equally, if not better, armed than the government. In all other circumstances, the government will absolutely subjugate the citizens and will do so at gunpoint, at nuclear point, which they weren't aware of at the time, or at any other ballistic point. And the only way to prevent that, the only way to deter that, is to make sure the exact armament, the exact same device, was pointed in the direction of the government. They knew that, and that's why they used arms and not any sort of time-specific technology that they had. So, if you have any questions about Article 2 to the Bill of Rights of the U.S. Constitution, if you think I'm just totally off my rocker, or maybe you have evidence, I haven't seen any thus far, that shows contrary to this, that the founders did in fact say, nope, arms only means muskets, frigates, cannons, so forth, I would greatly appreciate to see that down in the comments. Likewise, if there's a topic you'd like me to cover in a future lecture, also post those down in the comments, because the entire purpose of the Calhoun School of Law is to provide you with the necessary skills and information, such as this, to combat any sort of lawfare that will be waged against you, your loved ones, or your hard-earned property. So please, if you have any questions, go ahead and post them down in the comments. Excellent. So my name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information that plenty of bad folks would rather you not have. I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and if not, while you're down in the comments, go ahead and let me know how I can do better so I can best serve that purpose of helping you. I hope y'all have a wonderful day, and until I see y'all in the next lecture for the next topic, I bid you all farewell.